All right, good evening. The Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of June 26, 2024 is now called to order. As we begin the meeting tonight, I will request that staff make a presentation regarding the town's rules of decorum and civility.
Thank you. For the benefit of the community, the Town of Los Gatos asks that you follow the town's meeting guidelines while attending town meetings and treat everyone with respect and dignity.
Thank you so much. Let's begin with the roll then. As I call your name, please indicate your presence by saying here. Vice Chair Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Burnett. Not here, sorry. Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner Janoff.
Here.
And I'll also note the Commissioner Mayor is not here, and I am present as well. So I will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, so please stand if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the important work of the Planning Commission. Public input is always welcome and is always considered by this commission. During our meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. During the verbal communications period, an individual may speak about any matter which is not on our agenda. And also, during the hearing tonight on any agenda item, any member of the public may speak about that item, and you will be advised about the times when you speak on those items. If you wish to address the commission tonight during either the verbal communications time or when we consider an agenda item, please raise your hand in the Zoom app, or for those of you who are here in person, please fill out one of these yellow cards and pass that to a staff member. Please print your name clearly, or if you're speaking anonymously, just write down your initials. When you speak, I ask that you come up to the microphone, speak directly into it. This is important because this meeting is being recorded. Also, when you are called to speak, please state your name and address for the record, or indicate that you are speaking anonymously. In fairness to all who wish to speak tonight, your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So we'll begin tonight with verbal communications portion of our agenda, and that's for any item which is not on our agenda. You may come up to the microphone or appear on Zoom and speak for up to 3 minutes. A staff member will announce when your 3-minute time period is up. Is there any member of the public here in the chambers who wish to speak for verbal communications? Any item not on the agenda? All right, seeing none. Mr. Paulson, anyone on Zoom?
There's no one on Zoom.
Thank you. Then let's move to the consent calendar. Tonight we have one item on the consent calendar, that being the approval of the minutes of our meeting on June 12, 2024. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the Commission may request that this item be removed. Are there any such requests tonight? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented? Commissioner Hanson.
I move that we approve the consent calendar, which consists of the minutes of our last meeting.
Thank you so much. A second on that motion, please. Yes.
Second motion.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Then by a show of hands, may I see all those in favor of the motion? And the motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you all. Let's move then to the public hearings portion of our matter. Item number 2, that is, consider an appeal of the Community Development Director's decision to deny a request to remove a presumptive historic property, that is pre-1941, from the Historic Resources Inventory on property zoned R-18. Located at 32 Euclid Avenue, APN 529-30-064. It's accept pursuant to CEQA section 15061B3. Request for review of application PHST-24-001. Property owner / applicant / appellant is David Wilson. This matter has been continued from our May 8 and June 12, 24 meetings. I've asked this question previously, but I'll ask again this evening. By a show of hand, can I see all those who have visited the property? Thank you all, and any disclosures? Seeing none, Mr. Mullen, can I please have staff report on this item?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. On June 12th, the Planning Commission opened the public hearing on this item, received comments from the public on the appeal. Due to technical difficulties, the Planning Commission continued consideration of the appeal to tonight's meeting. Additional materials from the appellant were distributed with the staff report for tonight's meeting, and this concludes my presentation, and staff's available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Yes.
Mr. Mullen, has the staff's position changed regarding the appeal in light of the technical demolition argument?
Thank you for that question. Staff's position hasn't changed as we're forwarding and supporting the decision that was made by the director. The Planning Commission can certainly consider the additional information since this is a de novo hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I will then open up the microphone to the appellant. You have up to 5 minutes to speak. If you please state your name and spell it for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Norm Mattioni on behalf of the appellant and applicant. My address is 848 The Alameda, San Jose, California. Thank you, first of all, for accommodating me through the technical difficulties of 2 weeks ago. What I wanted to focus on, and I've had some handouts given to you to demonstrate that the property in question is not a barn. It hasn't been a barn for at least half a century. There's been numerous changes to the structure. The second story was adapted to an attic type of room. A front porch was added. The front facing wall has been removed in part. It was built as an addition to the main structure to provide an entry room. Windows were inserted, 4 windows across that area, a door on the side, brand new siding, and I want to talk particularly about the siding in a moment. This all constitutes a technical demolition of the property's facade, but over and above that, there's a kitchen, there's a bath, there's a bedroom, laundry room was added, fireplace, chimney, roof is asphalt shingles now. Skylights were put into the roof. Windows were cut into the sides of the old barn structure. And that also is important when you read the ordinance regarding technical demolition, because the demolition can be something in extent over 25% of the front-facing portion of the structure. It can also be 50% of the total exterior walls, whether intruded by windows or replaced. And if you look at the illustration, well, the photographs that I've given you, I think are important. The original structure is demonstrated in terms of the photograph here on the upper story where someone's sitting in the window. The old hayloft was converted to a window. You'll see a vertical siding on the building. And that was the whole structure of the barn at one time. But as adaptations took place, the siding on the lower floor was completely replaced with horizontal siding. Windows were inserted. This area in the second photograph, that's the dark brown, was removed. That's the front-facing facade to the street for the new addition that was put on that allowed this being removed, having a large interior room, the front room, the entry room. The siding is demonstrated on this photograph, the lower elevation here, across the addition that constituted 45%. And when you look at this, it's really an extension of an adaptation of the front of the building that is not the same as it was originally, because it's all horizontal siding. It's over 55% as it was recalculated today. The interior area that was removed, the front of the building, is shown on the upper photograph with the windows. The windows are aluminum framed. There's throughout the building that are wood frame. It's not architecturally consistent, and I think not architecturally significant. It certainly is not the barn, and I will leave that with you for any questions, since I see my time is winding down.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And again, before you sit, commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, you may sit down. We may have some further questions after public comment. Thank you so much. Okay, I have one additional card on this matter. Member of the public speaking, Harumi Gong. I understand a microphone will be delivered to you in the back. So if you could state your name for the record, give us your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak, please.
My name is Harumi Gong. I originally tried to submit this via email, but there was no email address listed in the agenda, so I'm here to read my comments in person. I live at 30 Euclid next door to the property in question. We've lived here for the past 21 years and knew the previous resident, Joe Rowland. I just wanted to say that we wholeheartedly support the property next door being removed from being considered a presumptive historic property as shown in the agenda. The date shown in parentheses is 1941. However, just looking at the property, you can see that something probably approaching half of the square footage are additions that have been done long after that date. Even so, those additions are in various states of disrepair, with one of the ones in the back of that have the laundry room collapsing during the storm season of 2022, and many others leaking where they join in the main structure. Gerald was in the process of getting the back addiction fixed when she got to the point that she couldn't live there alone anymore. At this point, with so many additions to the property, it really holds no resemblance to any kind of functional barn, which it apparently used to be. It's now just deteriorating with time and emptiness. As it was known years ago that there was a termite problem, and the longer it goes without significant renovation, the more it will become a haven for rats and termites and spiders, as well as a safety issue for the neighborhood. I'm not sure why this property is being prevented from being remodeled so that someone else can come live out their lives in a remodeled home. Certainly nobody would pay to live in it as it is, with all of the repairs that would be cost prohibitive just to make it barely livable. Again, we who live directly next to this hold no allegiance to this aging, deteriorating property and would like to see redeveloped. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Before you give back the microphone, commissioners, any questions for this member of the public? Seeing none, thank you again for coming down and giving us your comments. We appreciate it. I have no more members of the public who have filled out cards in person. So, Mr. Paulson, anybody on Zoom who wishes to be heard on this matter?
There's no one on Zoom.
Thank you so much. I'll then give the applicant one final opportunity to speak. Should you choose, you can have up to 3 minutes if there's anything additional you wish to say.
Thank you. I would just call your attention to the last illustration, which really gets the entire lower portion of the building's facade facing the street that has been modified, not just the addition, but the portion to the left if you're looking at the structure. And As you've seen, I think, since this has been before you on 3 occasions now, the neighborhood is in favor of the change, allowing the removal of buildings so a new structure can be placed. It does provide the opportunity for maintaining the housing stock. As I said, this is a house, not a barn. And all of that, I think, speaks to the neighborhood's view that it is not protecting an old structure that was a barn that has been converted to a house long ago. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And again, before you sit down, commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you so much. I'll go ahead then and close the public portion of this matter and open up the discussion to my fellow commissioners. If you have any questions, comments for staff, or if anybody's inclined to make a motion. Commissioner Hanson.
I have a procedural question for staff. Since this is an appeal, is there findings that we need to make? Is it the findings for removing from the inventory, or do we, I just wanted to understand the process of how we would, if we were in favor of granting the appeal, or even denying it, like what do we have to surface as evidence?
I can address that. So what's being appealed is the decision of the Historic Preservation Committee as to whether or not to remove this property from the town's historic inventory. And the town code provides that it's a de novo hearing, which means you consider the question anew. And the findings are in the staff report, the original staff report, but I think I'll read them into the record. And so the code provides that you're to consider the following findings. The structure is not associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the town. No significant persons are associated with the site. There are no distinctive characteristics of type, period, or method of construction or representation of work of a master. The structure does not yield information to town history, or the integrity has been compromised such that the structure no longer has the potential to convey significance. And even though the code uses the word or, I read the code to provide that the Planning Commission is to consider all those findings as a whole in making its determination.
Okay, that's helpful. And if I might go ahead and make a comment then. I thought that might be the direction, but I did want to verify. And so I had pulled up the staff report from the May 8th meeting, and I had looked at those findings. So it seems that in some of the historic preservation meetings, that what it basically came down to is the one piece of information that they maybe didn't have was for the item 5, which was the integrity of the structure, so it no longer has potential to convey significance. And there was some discussion, it looked like, at the various meetings about whether or not there was a significant person, and that was ultimately ruled out. It didn't look like there was any other items that could interfere with the findings. So when I looked at the 5 findings, and knowing that there might be more information tonight, it seemed to me that most of these things have been addressed, and then item 5 seemed to be very much addressed now that we have this additional evidence to consider. So while I don't have the background experience of having sat on the Historic Preservation Committee, that seemed very reasonable to me. So.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you, and I'm in agreement with Commissioner Hanson. I did want to mention, though, in reading the minutes of the Historic Preservation Committee meetings, it seems that they were fixated on the concept of this being a barn to be preserved. So that falls into the category of item number 4. I had a little trouble with calling the structure a barn when it's a residence. In years past, even on HPC, we've considered barns and outbuilding structures before when they were legitimately still a barn, one being the red barn that's on the North 40 that HPC recommended preserving because it's a legitimate barn. Once an interesting outbuilding structure that had historic merit in the past transforms or is transitioned into something that no longer conveys what that structure was, to me, we're not preserving a barn anymore. We're asking for a house to be recreated as a barn, then preserved, and it just seems a backward application of logic to me. So I am in favor of the appellant on the basis of number 4. It isn't a barn structure any longer, so trying to argue that it carries that historic significance is I think, without merit. And as Commissioner Hanson said, the details of the technical demo would be satisfactory to meeting item number 5. And since there didn't appear to be any other criteria offered on items 1, 2, and 3 of the required findings, then I don't see how we could do anything except overturn the recommendation of HPC.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners? I'll go ahead and jump in quickly. I usually wait till the end, but I was on the HPC when this matter first came before us on the November 15, 23 hearing, not the hearing from which this appeal has been taken, but one that preceded that. And at that hearing, I had voted to remove it from the inventory. It was my belief that there had been significant changes from the original structure and that it was not indeed a barn anymore. It had been transformed into something else. At that point, I think we were discussing a 45% change in the facade. I think new calculations show that even to be greater. So my belief in November at that time was this should have been removed from the inventory, and all the evidence I've heard since that time has only furthered that belief. Also, we've taken the testimony of at least 3 neighbors who all support removing it from the inventory so that the property can be rehabilitated and transformed into something else. And I think most importantly, and perhaps even dispositively, the new argument regarding technical demolition. We didn't have that, at least when I was sitting before the HPC, and I think that weighs heavily in this discussion for removing it from the inventory. So all those reasons, I would grant the appeal. But before I give up the microphone, I just wanted to raise 2 additional points, just for sake of clarity. Appellant also raised a couple of arguments regarding whether federal or state definitions of historically significant properties should be applied to those properties. My understanding is that Town of Los Gatos has never applied those definitions. We have our own set of standards, and while it may be informative, I think, again, the rule is that the town will make its own determinations regarding what is a historical property. And finally, there was some discussion in the papers regarding the conduct of the HPC. And I went through the record and I reviewed everything I could, and I found the HPC that acted appropriately. I don't now agree with their final conclusion, but it seems to be they considered the evidence that was before them and they acted appropriately. It's a different body than this. It's a little bit more informal, but I think, again, it takes its responsibilities seriously, and in my view, it acted at times, all times, appropriately in this matter. So those are my thoughts. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Burnett.
I join my fellow commissioners in support of the grant of the appeal. And Commissioner Hanson said that she was making the motion, but I would also be willing to do so.
Go right ahead, Commissioner Burnett.
Okay, with that, I move to grant the appeal of the Community Development Director decision to deny a request to remove a presumptive historic property pre-1941 from the Historic Resources Inventory on property located zoned R18, located at 32 Euclid Avenue, APN 529-30064, exempt from CEQA under Section 15061B3. Request of review application PHST 24001. Property owner and the appellant is an applicant is David Wilson. And I can make the following findings. The grant of the approval is exempt under CEQA, as mentioned, as required for a determination that a pre-1941 primary structure has no historic significance or architectural merit. Specifically, the structure is not associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the town. No significant persons are associated with the site. There are no distinctive characteristics of type, period, or method of construction or representation of work of a master. The structure does not yield information to town history, and the integrity has been compromised such that a structure no longer has potential to convey significance.
Thank you for that motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Hanson.
I second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the motion, but before the vote, I did want to also comment on the quality of the external report that was provided from your consulting historic research. I've got the wrong word, but you know what I'm talking about. It was a very well-detailed report. It's one of the richest historic assessment reports I've seen, and I was on HPC for a few years, and I've been on Planning Commission for a number of years. It was a very well done and thorough report, and I wanted to compliment the appellant on that.
Thank you for that. Any further comments from commissioners before we take the vote? All right, then I will take vote by roll. Please indicate your position on the motion as I state your name. Oh, I'm sorry.
You can just do raise of hands.
Raise hands. All right. By a show of hands, please indicate all those in favor of the motion. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Before you...
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Are there any appeal rights, Ms. Armour?
Yes, there are. Thank you. The decision of the Commission can be appealed to Town Council by any interested person as defined by Town Code Section 2910-020 within 10 days on forms available online and fees paid. Final deadline is 4 p.m. on the 10th day. Thank you.
Thank you to that. And thank you, applicant. I know this was a long and arduous process, so thank you for your time and efforts. All right. That takes us then to matter number 3. Request for approval for a technical demolition of a contributing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence to exceed the floor area ratio standards and requiring a variance to side yard setback requirements located in the Almond Grove Historic District on property zone R1D LHP, located at 123 Wilder Avenue, APN 510-18-008. Architecture and Site Application S-23-39 and Variance Application V-24-001. The project is categorically exempt pursuant to SEQO Guidelines 15301 for existing facilities. The property owner is Boguslaw Marcinkowski and Brigida Sass Marcinkowski. The applicant, Jose De Leao. May I have a show of hands, first of all, from commissioners who have visited the property? Thank you all. And any disclosures? Seeing none. Mr. Mullen, may I please have staff report?
Yes, and thank you again, and good evening. In September 2023, it was brought to the town's attention that work had occurred on the residence without required permits, and a stop work order was issued. After contacting the property owner to obtain the necessary information, staff determined that the unpermitted work resulted in a technical demolition of the historic structure and that an architecture and site application was required for a new residence. It was also determined that the project required approval of a request to exceed the allowable FAR and approval of a variance to the required side yard setback. The applicant submitted the required applications and the project was forwarded to the HPC for review. The HPC recommended approval of the project with 3 conditions, providing for appropriate restoration of the residence. The applicant has addressed each of the HPC's recommendations as reflected in the current project plans. The applicant proposes to restore the residence by removing the horizontal cement board siding that was installed without the benefit of permit and replace it with wood shingles to match those previously existing. The applicant also proposes replacement of 10 existing windows in the front portion of the residence. Upon completion of the work, the residence would be restored to its historic appearance. Regarding the request for an FAR exception, the existing residence is not the largest in terms of FAR or floor area and does not have the largest exceedance in the immediate neighborhood, and no additional square footage is proposed. Similarly, regarding the variance to the required setback, the restored residence would continue the existing non-conforming setback and no further setback encroachment is requested. Based on the analysis provided in your staff report, staff recommends approval of the applications subject to the conditions included in Exhibit 3. This concludes my presentation, and staff is on hand to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Burnett.
being inquisitive tonight. Mr. Mullen, as part of the architectural and site application process, is the reduced FAR considered by the fire department?
The project as a whole is considered by the fire department, and the FAR exceedance would be a portion of that, although I don't think it's typical that they comment on that, which is a zoning code issue.
Been there a long time, too.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Janoff.
I just wanted to confirm for the record, the footprint of the house is the existing house. And forgive me, I don't recall seeing the date of the house. What's the historic date of record?
I can track that down. I don't recall offhand. I think it was.
Well, are we in agreement that it's pre-1941?
It is definitely pre-41. It is a contributor to the Almond Grove district. It's very highly rated.
So this what's before us tonight hasn't altered the footprint of the house, the envelope of the house, elevations, other than the material changes. So
that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, none. I will then open it up to members of the public. The applicant, I believe, is here. Jose De Leao? Is that, if I've stated your name correctly, please speak to the microphone.
Yes, that's correct. Good evening.
You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank
So
you.
I'm the contractor. I have no questions,
Oh, okay.
no comments.
All right. Before you sit down then, Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? No. Thank you very much for attending. Mr. Paulson, is there anybody on Zoom?
There is not.
Very good. I would re-ask the applicant if they wish to speak again, but given your first set of comment, I'm expecting none. Then I will close the public portion of the comments and open the discussion up to my commissioners for questions, comments, thoughts, or, if appropriate, a motion. Commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
In looking at this, it seems as though now that the town approached them with the stop work order and got things on track in terms of the architecture and site, that the things that they need variances on are already existing conditions of the property. We wouldn't want them to change that. It seems like there's enough evidence in the neighborhood of the same kinds of things happening. And then as far as the direction that they went, that they might not have wanted to go if they had talked to the Historic Preservation Committee, they're willing to make all of those changes. So I see no reason why we can't grant the architecture and site, because we're not asking for any kind of special considerations that others wouldn't have in their neighborhood.
Thank you. Commissioner Janoff?
Yeah, and just to add on to Commissioner Hanson's comments, if we think about it a little bit more fully, if we were to fix the elements that we're looking for an exception for, we would be detrimentally altering an historic structure that is a contributing a structure in the neighborhood. So to not allow the exceptions would exacerbate the situation. So I think it's wise for us to be in favor of the architecture and site application.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
I am in agreement with my fellow commissioners and just wanted to add that it's unfortunate that how this came about and that a stop order had to be issued, etc. However, I appreciate that the applicant is willing to move forward with the appropriate process, and I think that what HPC recommended and fully adopting that makes me feel comfortable about approving this. And also, I mean, this house clearly needed some work to be done because there was some damage. So in the long run, it is appreciated that there's a historic home that's receiving the care that it needs to remain a historic structure, and unlike the previous one that we just the previous item. So even though the layout of events is a little unfortunate, I also can make all of the findings, and it is kind of funny to see that we have to make these exceptions, or, we're looking at the FAR and the setback, but clearly we don't want the structure to change. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments, Commissioners? Or if not, do I have a motion that may be presented? Commissioner Hanson.
I move that we approve architecture and site application S-23-039 and variance application V-24-001, requesting approval for technical demolition of a contributing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence to exceed the floor area ratio standards and requiring a variance to side yard setback requirements located in the Almond Grove Historic District on property zoned R1D LHP APN 510-18-008. I can find that the project is categorically exempt pursuant to the adopted guidelines for the California Environmental Quality Act. I can make the required findings for technical demolition of existing structures, including that the housing stock will be maintained. The existing structure has no historical significance. Nothing's being changed that will change that. The property owner does not desire to maintain the structure as it exists, and the economic utility of the structures is considered. I can make the findings with our zoning regulations, the findings for exceeding floor area ratio, being that it was consistent with the property as it was, and the required findings for granting a variance application, and the required compliance with the residential design guidelines, as well as the considerations and review of architecture and site applications. And also I will add in the conditions that are contained in Exhibit 3.
Thank you for that motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Jenoff.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. I have a first and second. Commissioners, any comments before we? Yes, Vice Chair.
Do we need to include the HPC recommendations, or is that included in the motion as is?
HPC made a recommendation to the commission, so the commission does not need to include them as a
Include
finding.
that also. Okay.
And their modifications are reflected
Are
in the
reflected in
development
the current
plans
plan.
in
Okay.
Exhibit 9.
That's what I just wanted to confirm, that all that was documented somewhere. Okay.
Should we add on the plans in Exhibit 9?
All right, so the motion has been modified. The second?
Seconder agrees.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, by a show of hand, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you. Appeal rights.
The decision of the commission can be appealed to town council by any interested person, as defined by Town Code Section 2910.020, within 10 days on forms available online with fees paid. Final deadline is 4 p.m. on the 10th day.
Thank you so much, and thank you. All right, let's turn then
Thank
to...
you.
Thank you. Let's turn then to either other business or a report from the Director of Community Development.
We have nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Then let's turn to the subcommittee reports. In addition to their time as planning commissioners, members of the commission also serve on subcommittees. My understanding is that the General Plan Committee has met earlier today. If I can have a report on how that meeting went.
Okay.
Vice Chair?
Yes, we had a meeting today at 5:30 to discuss and make a recommendation to us about changing something in the general plan, the land use designation for a parcel in the off Harwood in the Bellwood community?
The address is 220 Gatos.
220 Gatos. 220 Gatos. And so we had a short discussion, and it was a quick meeting. So that will be coming our way.
Thank you so much. All right, that then concludes this evening's meeting. I wish to thank all commissioners for their participation, members of staff for your, again, diligent efforts. And to our two missing colleagues tonight, I believe at least one of them is ill, so I wish them best. And we'll see everybody next time. With that, the meeting is adjourned.